Welcome to another episode of Small Talk and Big Ideas, where we have a small discussion about some big ideas. My name's Peter, and I've often approached uncomfortable situations with the cliche, fake it till you make it, floating around in my brain. I suppose for me it's been a defense mechanism against intrusive doubts about my skills, or lack thereof. I found that invoking this phrase helped convince myself in situations when I lacked confidence, that all I had to do was appear confident, and eventually I'd find my footing. In interviews, while giving a presentation, or when meeting someone new. Pretty much any time that I knew I had to appear knowledgeable or approachable. So I'd put on my best outfit, stand tall, and speak with as much clarity and charisma as I could muster. And when I look back at those times, I find that more often than not, it worked. I sounded confident and approachable, and I got my point across. I connected with people, made new friends. And as it turned out, pretending to be something more than what I was helped me out. And as I survived more and more of these uncomfortable situations, I continued to reassure myself that if this approach worked this time, it'll work next time. But how does a simple reflection carry so much power? Why did it work for me all these years? Being someone who values and implements evidence-based practices, I had to find out what it meant and how it relates to my current practice of teaching others how to be confident with their soft skills. So I went back to the drawing board to find out what it all meant. Little did I know my journey would be full of surprises, and the cliche that I've come to appreciate meant more than I realized. Starting with a quick Google search, the results came back and were not what I expected. I thought maybe I'd get a reference to a journal or a link to some ancient musings from a philosopher. No. It came back as a lyric from a Simon and Garfunkel song from the 70s called Fakin' It. You can imagine my immediate dismay to discovering that the mantra I've been using for years was nothing more than a pop culture reference. Naturally, I had to listen to the song because perhaps maybe it held some deep meaning, some inspired story. As it turns out, it was just a song about feeling like a fraud. But this notion of fraudulence sparked me to focus on a phenomenon from a notable Canadian sociologist by the name of Erving Goffman. Erving Goffman was born in 1922 and died in the year that I was born in 1982, but his theories and perspectives are still held in high regard in the academic world. His major contributions to the world of sociology included his perspectives on stigma, frame analysis, and impression management. In a very small nutshell, his work focused on understanding how people view themselves and others through frames to shape their perspectives, and how that led to the development of stereotypes, and how people tend to regulate their own characteristics and behaviors around others to look favorable. How does this all relate to fake it till you make it? Well, amongst Goffman's many contributions emerged his dramaturgical perspective. This mouthful was a perspective that explained social interaction as being comparable to theatrical performances, meaning that individuals are just actors playing a variety of roles in a variety of situations, and all those situations were just different stages for which to perform upon. This approach helps people to succeed in social interactions. I mean, after all, who doesn't like a good act? Further to the dramaturgical perspective was Goffman's ideas about impression management. Goffman's book, Presentation of the Self in Everyday Life, discussed how people manage others' impressions of them by carefully presenting themselves in a way that favorably affected how they were viewed. That meant regulating certain information about themselves and managing certain personal characteristics in front of others to ensure a successful social interaction. Sounds an awful lot like how we act during interviews or when we speak publicly, or even when we're introduced to somebody that we want to establish a connection with. If that's not fake it till you make it, I don't know what is. So if impression management can be considered a part of managing or developing successful relationships, what current evidence is there that relates to soft skill development specifically in the world of virtual reality? Enter Jeremy Bailenson and Nick Yee. Jeremy Bailenson is a professor at Stanford University, and if you haven't heard of Jeremy or Nick, I'm happy to provide you with a quick rundown. I'll state first that this brief overview does not do justice to either Nick or Jeremy, but I hope it sparks an interest for you to investigate them further and see just how impactful their work has been for educational and social development. Jeremy is the founding director of Stanford University's Virtual Human Interaction Lab. He's a professor of communication, education, symbolic systems, and he has a PhD in cognitive psychology. He's published over 200 academic papers and studies the psychology of virtual and augmented reality, specifically how virtual experiences can lead to changes in one's perception and behaviors. His resume is more than impressive, and I provided a link to his Stanford biography in the description below. If you're at all interested in how virtual environments can affect social development, he's the leading expert in the field to check out. Comparable to Jeremy, Nick Yee is the co-founder and lead analyst for Quantic Foundry, which is a consulting practice for game analytics. Nick's also dedicated himself over the past 20 years to the psychological research of gaming and how individuals interact within games. He's worked as a researcher for gaming giants such as Ubisoft and Sony Online Entertainment, and for notable academic institutions such as Stanford University and Palo Alto Research Center. Nick's published book, The Proteus Paradox, discusses the way that people behave in online gaming environments, why self-representation in these environments matters, and what influence the use of avatars have on users' real-life behavior. If you're interested in learning about Nick, I've provided a link to Nick Yee's biography and dissertation from Stanford University in the description below, so take a look at that when you can. In 2007, Bailenson and Yee published an article which introduces the above-mentioned Proteus effect, which has to do with how one's presentation of self can have an effect on how one acts in a virtual environment and subsequently in real life. I encourage you to read the article, which is also in the description below. Firstly, what's with the name Proteus? Proteus was a mythical god and shepherd of the sea creatures who held great knowledge and the ability to shapeshift into any animal, land or sea. And sailors or adventurers who needed answers or guidance in their travels sought after Proteus's great knowledge and would try to capture him and force him to divulge what he knew. Proteus didn't much like being captured or handing out such information that he possessed, so he used his power of shapeshifting to help present himself as something that he wasn't in order to escape or avoid divulging what he knew. Sounds a bit like impression management, doesn't it? So it's a fitting name for the effect that Bailenson and Yee were highlighting. Let's get back to the study. The Proteus effect is a phenomenon that occurs when a person operating in a virtual environment is affected by the characteristics of the avatar that they've chosen to represent themselves with. Bailenson and Yee discussed how people who engaged in social interactions with taller, more attractive avatars would act more confidently in negotiations and be more outgoing during social interactions. Subsequent research by Bailenson and Yee demonstrated how this phenomenon, which begins in the virtual realm, transferred into real life. Specifically, it was noted that individuals who began socializing more confidently online with attractive avatars, either consciously or subconsciously, began to adopt the same outgoing and confident behaviors after they left the virtual world and began to interact with others in real life. Further to that, Bailenson and Yee identified that once an individual realized that this behavior was something that benefited them, they then became more comfortable and willing to adopt these behaviors and attitudes in real-life situations. Haha! That's fake it till you make it. Very cool. So not only does this clever fake it till you make it sentiment hold weight, but current evidence suggests that if you create an avatar in virtual reality that embodies the social skills you might lack and operate within that avatar, you can consciously or even subconsciously take on the characteristics and behaviors and transfer them into real life. Now, with this information, there's some major implications worth noting, especially when it comes to soft skill development. First, using avatars that embody desired soft skills can potentially reinforce positive behaviors. For example, if an avatar exhibits effective communication or teamwork, users might internalize these qualities and save them for use in future interactions that are vital, like interviews or networking events or problem-solving challenges, which contributes to their soft skill development. Secondly, the opportunity to engage in soft skill development under the guise of a confident avatar can enhance learner engagement and subsequent practice of the skills, meaning users might be more likely to actively participate and practice these skills in a virtual setting, which can contribute to a more dynamic and effective learning experience for them. Meaning, if they see that their newly acquired skills or improved confidence worked in the virtual realm, they're going to have the confidence to try it in real-life scenarios. And lastly, even if we consider the development of cultural sensitivity and inclusivity for people, leveraging an inclusive avatar design can contribute to the development of a more culturally sensitive and inclusive behavioral approach, which can potentially reduce stereotypes and biased behaviors that degrade our social interactions. So the next time you think about the phrase fake it till you make it, don't just think about it as a way to convince yourself that you have what it takes. Think about it as an approach that allows you the chance to try a better way of interacting with others. It's an opportunity to wear an outfit of confidence and discover that it fits you better than you'd think. So in conclusion, when it comes to soft skill development, Helping others develop soft skills in a world where they can not only learn safely and discreetly, but present themselves in a way that maximizes their confidence and willingness to participate will allow them to step outside their comfort zone, master skills, enhance their success, which can transfer into their lives in meaningful ways. Thanks for joining me again for another episode of Small Talk and Big Ideas. My name's Peter, and until next time, don't forget to learn, play, and innovate.